Hey everyone, welcome back to Megha Discourse, and in today's lecture, we are going to cover Anglo-Norman literature. This is the continuation of part 1, Anglo-Saxon literature, in which we read that Anglo-Saxon literature was declined because of Viking invasions. For historical and social backgrounds of Anglo-Norman age, I would suggest you that you have to watch the videos on Ages of English Literature, which I uploaded earlier on my channel. And in this age, we have several major writers and some significant works. So we will cover them in this lecture. And without any further delay, let's begin our lecture. So the history of English literature enters a decisive transitional phase with the advent of Anglo-Norman literature, which emerges after one of the most significant political and cultural events in British history. How? Let's uncover it. It is because of the Battle of Hastings in 1066, or you can say Norman Conquest. So the Norman Conquest marked not merely a change of rulers, but a radical transformation of language, culture, and a social structure and literary expression in England. How? Why so? So when William, Duke of Normandy, defeated King Harold at Hastings, England came under Norman control, and with it, it became a period in which French culture was predominant. There were feudal institutions and continental literary forms were imposed upon on existing Anglo-Saxon foundation. So the result was not the immediate disappearance of English literature. As we all know, suddenly nothing disappears, but it is reorientation under Norman influence, and it gives rise to what is known as Anglo-Norman literature. So the origin of Normans were considered that they belonged to Scandinavian settlers, adopted the language and culture during their settlement in Normandy. By the 11th century, they spoke a variety of Old French and possessed a highly developed feudal system. So you can find two things appeared. First, we have French language, and then we have feudal system. And before that, we have Latin language in Greek. And the courtly manners and the literary traditions, it derived from Latin and Romance sources. So after the conquest, Norman French became the language of court, administration, aristocracy, and you can say literary production, while Latin remained the language of church and scholarship. So look at the division of language. And English, reduced to the status of a spoken vernacular, survived primarily among the common people. So this linguistic division produced a trilingual culture in medieval England. So we have Latin language, we have French language, and we have English language. They are divided according to rank. So Latin for learning, French for elites, and English for the message for the common people. So Anglo-Norman literature thus developed primarily in French language, but within an English political and geographical context. So we can say there was a combining feature of French, Latin, and English language. So this is the first important point so far as Norman literature is considered. Now, the literary output of Anglo-Norman period, it reflects the taste and values of Norman ruling class. Heroic themes were there, which gave to romance feudal loyalty, and it replaced tribal allegiance, and literature began to celebrate chivalry, courtly love, aristocratic ideals, and legendary history, rather than purely heroic combat like Beowulf. So the taste changes. One of the most important development of this period is emergence of historical and legendary narratives that sought to legitimize Norman rule by linking the Britain mythical past. So this impulse finds its most influential expression in the works of Geoffrey of Monmouth, and one of the foundational figures of Anglo-Norman historiography. So let's read about this writer. So Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote Historia Regum Britannica, which is a pseudo-classical narrative. It is written in Latin language, which traces the history of Britain from its legendary founder Brutus to the Anglo-Saxon period. So although historically it is unreliable, this work exerted enormous influence on medieval imagination by popularizing the Arthurian legend. So Geoffrey presents king Arthur, not merely a warrior but a king as an imperial ruler. So, whose court embodies chivalric ideals? So, his work provided the narrative framework for later Arthurian romances, and it played a crucial role in shaping the medieval concept of British identity. So, Geoffrey blending the myth, history, and romance, which makes a significant departure from the you can say sober historiography of writers like Venerable Bede, and illustrates the Norman preferences for imaginative historical reconstruction. So he changed the outlook, he changed the writing style, and it is evident that the work like King Lear, Idylls of King, and Morte d'Arthur, they are based on his works. So this is the important point to note. After Battle of Hastings, Norman brought with them centralized government, new language and literature, and Caesar's rule. So these 3 points are important so far as our Norman Conquest social background is concerned, historical background is concerned. And it is also true that the modern English language, it is actually the welding of Saxon language and French language in one speech. So in this way, our English evolved. The Anglo-Norman engagement with British legendary history, it reaches a crucial stage in Lemon's Brut, which is a Middle English adaptation of Way's French Roman de Brut. And this is itself was based on Geoffrey's work. So this work has immense importance because it represents a transitional literary movement in which English begins to reassert itself as a written literary language. Although influenced by Norman Romance traditions, Lemons retains many features of Old English alliterative style, thereby bridging the Anglo-Saxon and Anglo-Norman literary worlds. So this poem narrates the legendary history of Britain, with particular emphasis on King Arthur, whose portrayal combines heroic grandeur with chivalric nobility. So this work stands as an early sign of gradual resurgence of English literature after its normal eclipse. And this work is written in doggerel verse. And it is said that the Arthurian dying speech resembles Tennyson Morte d'Arthur work. And this work actually described the destruction of Troy and the flight of King Aeneas, who was the king of Italy at that time, the Duke of Italy. And Brutus is said that he was the grandson of Aeneas. This poem narrates the legendary history of Britain. And alongside historical romances, the Anglo-Norman period, it also witnessed the circulation of didactic and moral narrative poems, which adapted from continental sources. So one such influential work is The Seven Wise Masters. It is actually the collection of framed moral tales, which was derived from Eastern and classical traditions. This work exemplifies the medieval taste for exemplar, that is a short narrative designed to convey ethical romances, ethical lessons. So this story emphasized wisdom, prudence, and the moral judgment, and reflecting the pedagogical functions of literature in medieval period. So their popularity demonstrates the increasing interest in prose and narrative instructions alongside poetic romances. So this is about the didactic poem. And moreover, we have religious prose which continued to develop during this period, particularly in the works intended for devotional guidance like Ancrine Revel or Ancrine Vise. It is one of the most significant prose texts of the early Middle English, and it means rule of Angus. The work provides spiritual instruction, moral guidance, and you can say practical advice for religious life. Its language is very simple but expressive, marking a crucial stage in the evolution of English prose. So Ancrine Revel reveals how religious literature played a vital role in preserving English as a literary language during its period dominated by French. So this is the story of three ladies who wanted to live a religious life but without being nun or without transforming themselves into nun or any other religious model. The another monumental religious work of this period is Cursor Mundi, our very important one. It is a long Middle English verse narrative that recount biblical history from creation to doomsday, and it is written in metrical tone and it is intended for particular instruction. The poem demonstrates the medieval desire to make sacred history accessible to lay audience. The moral seriousness of this work, it shows the importance of Christian narrative in the medieval literary culture, as we have read in Anglo-Saxon literature that after Christianization we have two missionaries, that is Saint Augustine and Saint Aidan. So we found the Christian impact as we move forward. So we also have debate poetry, which also flourished during this period. For example, The Owl and the Nightingale. It is one of the earliest Middle English poems written as a dialogue between two birds, owl and nightingale, which represents opposing viewpoint. And this poem employs wit, satire, and rhetorical skill to explore themes of morality, art, and social conduct. The tone is conversational. Arguments reflect a growing sophistication in English poetic expression, and it suggests that the influence of French debate on traditions adapted to English vernacular. We can say that one bird, she represents the pleasant side of life, the gay life of sight, but another bird, she represents the laws and morals of the life. So this is the debate between these two birds. Then we have Romance literature, which read one of its artistic peak in Sir Gawain and Green Knight. It is an interesting poem and you have to read that. It is a 14th century poem associated with the Anglo-Norman chivalric literature tradition. Despite being written in Middle English, the poem exemplifies the alliterative revival and it incorporates a distinctive metrical feature. You can say the bob and wheel, it is known as tail rhyme in French language and rhymed refrain in English language. The narrative test is the ideal of chivalry, honor, and moral integrity through Gawain's encounter with the Green Knight. It is based on chivalry. The poem blends courtly elegance with moral seriousness and revealing the mature development of Romance literature in England. So you can see the French source in this work. And closely associated with Sir Gawain and Green Knight, we have the Pearl poem. Because the writing style of the Pearl and the poem Sir Gawain, they are similar. So it is said that writer of the both works, they are one. So the Pearl is a dream allegory that combines exquisite lyricism with profound theological reflection. And this poem narrates a father vision of his lost child in a heavenly landscape and explores themes of loss, salvation, and divine grace. Its intricate stanza structure and symbolic depth mark one of the highest achievements of medieval English poetry. And it was originally written without title. In 1864, Richard Morris, who translated this work, he has given the title The Pearl to this poem. And in this series, we also have two other poems, Patience and Cleanliness. Like in Cleanliness, we have biblical story. Similarly, in Patience, we found the stories of John. And popular imagination during this period is also produced satirical and utopian work, such as The Land of Cocaine and Luxury Land. They were actually satirical work and satire on monks, and they depict a mythical land of abundance and luxury over where labor is unnecessary and pleasure is endless. So, and it offering a comic relief while subtly criticizing social inequality. It exemplifies the ballad tradition of popular poetry that flourished alongside courtly literature. We also have lyric poetry. So before lyric poetry, we have completed ballad poetry, didactic poetry, religious poetry, chivalric poetry. Now this time for lyric poetry. Lyric poetry also expanded during the Anglo-Norman period, and especially in short religious and secular songs. So these lyrics often expresses personal devotion, love, seasonal celebration, and it reflects the growing influence of French lyrical forms. So the coexistence of sacred and secular lyricism illustrate the increasing emotional range of medieval poetry. And also I would like to add one more point, that before the poems like Cursor Mundi, we have poems on deeds, on our karmas, and it is called gest, G-E-S-T, geste. Exactly, I do not know about the pronunciation because it is a French term, like Chasson de Geste and This work is based completely on our deeds, good deeds or bad deeds. They were divided into three divisions: France, Roman, and Britain. So Chasson de Gueste, it exemplifies the dates of these divisions. Literature of Anglo-Norman age is characterized by several defining features in which we will find multilingualism, dominance of romance, chivalric ideas, blending of history and legend, mention of religious and didactic writing, and I think gradual re-emergence of English as a literary language. So poetry during this period, it appears in multiple forms, including romance, debate poetry, religious narrative, allegory, lyric, ballad. So each type reflects a different social function, from aristocratic entertainment to moral instruction and popular satire. So in nutshell, Anglo-Norman literature, it represents a period of transformation rather than decline, though English is temporary and it lost its prestige because the Norman Conquest, which enriches literary culture by introducing new genre, themes, and stylistic seriousness, sophistication. So the fusion of Norman romance with English tradition, it ultimately paved the way for flowing of Middle English literature in the age of Chaucer. Anglo-Norman literature, it stands as a vital bridge between the heroic world of Anglo-Saxon and the cosmopolitan literary culture of later medieval England. So this is all about our Anglo-Norman literature, and I hope you all are not get bored. In Anglo-Saxon literature and in Anglo-Norman literature, two works are important. One, first we have Beowulf, then Sir Gawain and Green Knight. They both are very important work, and we have to read them in detail. Okay, you have to make notes on them. Also, I will make a video on it. And the other works like Brute and Historia Regum Britannia, Ecclesiastical History of English People. We just need to get some ideas about these works. Okay, but you have to read Beowulf and Sir Green Knight and Gawain very thoroughly. And I hope this lecture will help you and you will find it informative and helpful. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe our channel, Megha Discourse, and stay updated, stay connected. Bye-bye.